Hello, everybody. This is us, Sarah and I, Isaline, and we are happy to be back for another SEO Nerds Switzerland. We kind of missed you during summer. I mean, it was good to have holidays, obviously, and sun, but we still kind of missed our little meetup. So we're really happy to be back now. And so I see that people are joining us. There is a little numbers at the bottom of my screen saying 9, 10, 11, and more. So
I can see them
that's
too
good.
Now.
So, can you hear us?
Yes, please do write in the chat if you can hear us and see us, and that no technical fix to do. It's always great to know. Hey, hi, Despina. Nice seeing you here. Okay. That's great. That's great. Well, Sarah, if you want to share the slides.
So let's start at this point.
I can start. And
I will share the slides. Just give me a second. Share the slides. Yeah, here we go. Maybe I should start from the first one. That's always a good idea. Okay. Oops. Okay.
all right.
Welcome back.
Thanks, Sarah. So welcome to SEO Nerds Switzerland. This is the first meetup of our back to school moments, like, September meetup. And for the ones who don't know yet, if it's your first time, SEO Nerds Switzerland is a non-profit association, which means that everything that Sarah and I do, it's like a passion project. So it's our free time. We're not paid to do that, but we have lots of fun doing it and working together. But we do have sponsors, which I'll mention later, to help us cover, of course, the operating costs and the softwares and these kind of things. And so anything you do to share the events, it's great for us. It helps us a lot. And a little bit of history here. Sarah and I, we met because we worked together in the same agency. And then I started to go on my own, to start my own consultancy. And we were like, oh, but we need to keep working, doing something together. So we started SEOnerd Switzerland. And the second reason also that we started the meetup is that we didn't find a meetup about SEO here where we lived. And we were like, oh, but if there is not the meetup, then we'll start the meetup. Then COVID happened and the meetup turned online. And then I don't know really how it happened, but now you are here and we have online meetups and we have an international audience and we love it. So we will not go back to having in-person meetup ever, I think.
Yes, exactly. Good.
We might see you maybe at some conferences when we'll travel again and have a drink there. But for now, it's just the meetup, and the apéro will be, drinks together will be for some other time. And so let's go to our sponsor. Okay, time to thank our sponsors. So Leap, a web agency, one of the biggest in Switzerland, where Sarah works, and pilea.ch, that's my consultancy. And that's about, Zoom and Meetup and the gifts and these kind of things. So thanks so much for their support. This is really, really helpful.
Oops.
And and this is the next event.
So let me introduce Emilia, Emma, for the friends. She is a computer science, and she's a computer science engineer. She works in SEO, and we particularly love her approach, her critical thinking. And so we asked her to participate to our meetup, because she has this background. Like, sometimes people are a little bit scared about people in computer science, but she's a perfect mix. And then she will explain us a bit how she works, how she interacts, how the two worlds should work together. And then she will give us some great example. She will speak about Google Cloud too. Yes, I mean, I would say there is a meetup for everybody then wants to better understand these two words and want like to have a better critical thinking and be ready to integrate better between everybody. So I hope then I was clear. If not, you can read Emilia presentation. So, okay, so now I should introduce Alex. And but before, I just would like to do something. Oh no, but you can't see me, so I will do it at the end. So let me introduce Alex. As I said, so she didn't have like a linear pattern. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. So she started in sales. Yes. And for the travel agency, and then, as most of us start in another domain, she switched, and she switched to SEO, and now she works for Onelli, which is one of the main technical SEO agency. So one thing that we really like about Alex is when you speak to her, she really has a human approach in everything. Whenever we were organizing the meetup, she had this lovely human approach, which is not something that you find all the time. And there was this sentence which she sent us, and we find it like lovely. Then it was, SEO is all about user. And I know what you're thinking, because I also saw the same thing. Yes, this is what everybody say, and yes, we repeat it too. But then there is Google, no? And there is the other search engine. And then she completed the sentence with, and search engine are just user with particular needs. So so it was funny. It was exactly that. And I don't know what else should we say. Should we say something else about you, Alex? Oh,
I think that you've covered a lot of it. Yeah, I ended up in SEO because I was dealing with a lot of people in sales, and then I figured that there's a lot of information missing on websites for those people, you know. And yeah, that kind of stays the focus, and Google is just kind of a filter and stuff. So it's yeah, I'm super happy to be here, and yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful working with you guys so far. I think we can just get it all started with.
yes, good. So we will let you share your presentation.
All right. All right, perfect. Can you see?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Wonderful. Oh, I've went a little too far. You've seen too much. Stop it. Okay, cool. All right, so let's just get it started. Thank you so much for the introductions. We have gathered in here so that we can talk about the indexing problems. So let's move on to the indexing challenges. So as Sarah said, and I'm going to be true to that throughout the whole presentation, I'm all about people. So before I actually finished, before I kind of started finalizing the presentation, I checked up who signed up for the meetup today. And I realized that we've got quite of, or at least from the subscriptions there, we had quite a lot of diverse bunch with us. So there were SEOs with quite a lot of experience in the field, but there are also more generally focused digital marketers. So I thought it would be a good idea to start the presentation with kind of getting on the same page with how search works, because getting on Google is actually a process. And it's important to understand that each of this process is equally important to get us to the final line, which is the ranking. So Google puts a lot of effort into discovering URLs. They discover URLs because they already have some URLs in their databases. They discover URLs from venturing from one URL to another. They discover URLs through sitemaps that are being uploaded by website owners. And then once they have the discovered kind of backlog, the list of discovered URLs, they start crawling them to understand what's on them. They render the page so that they can understand the textual, non-textual, the layout portions of the page to see whether some of it can actually be presented later on in Google search. Once they figure out that there are portions of that content that can be presented to users later on, this is where the indexing happens. So the cataloging portion of the content, so that later on when the user types something into Google, they can pull out the information from the index and give the user the information that they want based on the, let's say, general quality of the search result, but as well based on the more user-focused factors like the user's location, the language that they're using, or the device that they're using. Now, once again, when we're talking about digital marketing, we very often focus on the ranking itself, but the ranking will never magically happen if the pages are not indexed. And that's why we kind of, at Onely, we focus a lot on the indexing part. And we noticed through a lot of research that mostly my colleagues have been through, that indexing is quite of an underestimated problem, and a lot of big brands are struggling with it. So one of the bigger brands that is really struggling with it is Walmart, that has about 50% of its content outside of Google's index, and they're not alone. There is more brands that probably the majority of you are familiar with, that also struggle to have all of their valuable pages, putting all of their valuable pages on Google's index. And so we have, for example, Sony, Zoom, and Slack that have about 1/5 of their contents outside of the Google's index, which is pretty decent when you compare it to e-commerce giant like Myntra that has the majority of URLs outside of the index, or Menards and Amway. So why actually is indexing such a big of a challenge? Google simply can't crawl and index every valuable page. I always think about Google as this super rich, fantastic company that has its data centers all over the world, that has a lot of super smart people out there. So they seem like they have really a lot of money and a lot of resources to do what they do best, which is do Google search. But the problem is that the web is quite of an infinite space. So every single day we have 250,000 websites added to the web. That's 175 per minute. So when you compare the vastness of these numbers with even gigantic resources that Google has, it simply doesn't add up. It just cannot match. And let's face it, that not all of the websites that are out there are actually valuable for everybody, or even for a portion of the users. So even if Google is aware of a lot of valuable pages, they're going to make the Googlebot visit only a portion of it. And then they're going to index only a portion of that portion. So if we have these gigantic resources, so the index is kind of the amount of the URLs that are going to be actually indexed kind of shrinks in comparison to the overall amount of pages that they're going to visit. And so Google limits, they lead to Google trying to limit the number of URLs that they're crawling and then indexing from the very beginning. And that starts even at the moment of crawling. So Google skips some URLs without visiting them. So before they even understand what's on those pages. How does it happen? So when Google discovers pages, they create a sort of a backlog. And that backlog, every URL in that backlog is assigned a certain priority. Now, if the priority is high, then great. The URLs with the higher priority are going to get crawled. Then once they get crawled, they have a chance of being indexed and they have a chance of being ranked. But if the URL is assigned a smaller priority, then it's absolutely no way that without them being crawled, they're not going to get indexed and they're never going to see, no one's ever going to see them rank. And this is the problem that can very easily scale up, because imagine that one of the main pages doesn't get crawled. Then the subpages of that main page are not going to get discovered and crawled either. And it basically just goes on and on. So this way, the whole sections of the page may not get discovered or crawled and then indexed and ranked by Google. But the next question is, should you even care? There are so many different ways in which you can make use of your URLs. So why care about indexing all of your valuable content? Well, I'm an SEO, so I do think that you should care because it's organic traffic and I like it and basta, do it. But jokes aside, once just think that you've already spent a lot of money creating those pages, right? So you've paid your developers, you've paid your content creators, you've put a lot of people on the job so that the URL is hanging out somewhere out there on the web. So why not making a little bit more of the money that you've already invested and allowing that content to be indexed by Google? So that's another, so if organic traffic is just not something that speaks to you, so maybe that will. And if not, there is this third kind of a point that is closely related to your branding efforts. And I stole that example from one of my marketing team, one of the girls from my marketing team. And she said, listen, imagine it this way. So you're looking for a book, right? And I love books. So that example just kind of hit me straight. And she's like, you're looking for a book. You have this wonderful book that you want to buy and you're a fan of Barnes and Nobles. Okay, so what do? You go to Google, you type the title of the book and you type Barnes and Nobles. And voila, you can see that on the first page of Google, Barnes and Noble is not even there. Well, all right, you're maybe a little sad for a millisecond, but then you just buy your book elsewhere and you go home waiting for your book to arrive. But the thought kind of stays with you that, okay, the last time I was searching for a book, I didn't find it on Barnes and Nobles. Now, you didn't look for it on Barnes and Nobles, you looked for it on Google. But a lot of people make this assumption that if it's not on Google, it does not exist. And it might be wrong, but it still happens. So if you're not investing and if you're not caring for your for the indexation of your valuable pages, this kind of branding loss can happen to you as well. So I do encourage everybody watching to do care about indexing. All right, so we're moving to the most fun part of the presentation, at least most fun for me. What are the most common indexing issues? So we have 4 of them, and I'm going to walk you through all 4 problems, and we're going to focus mostly on diagnosing them. So the first problem is URL indexing. It's basically a situation in which the URL is not in the index at all. The second problem is mobile first related indexing. It's when the content that you would prefer index is not visible on the mobile version of your page. The third problem is related to JavaScript. Is basically when the valuable content that you would like index is hidden in a way behind the JavaScript. And the fourth one is layer-based indexing problem, which is the most funky and the least clear to anybody, even those who have already researched it pretty thoroughly. But I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. So each of these indexing problems has different solutions, they have different origins, but we're, as I said in the beginning, we're going to focus on trying to diagnose them first. So moving on to URL indexing. It loads a little bit. Okay, first, so we have a page, a Walmart page, product page. So you can buy a poster, you can find this page on when you're looking for products within the Walmart website. But then you take the URL, you take it to Google, you use the cite command, and you realize, nope, this particular product is not on Google. And this is how you get the information whether the URL is actually indexed or not. So this is a very simple method that I personally use pretty much every day. But this method has a little bit of a challenge. I'm going to call it this way. So the cite command sometimes shows the false negatives. And what are the false negatives? So it's a situation in which when you type the URL after the cite command, Google tells you, no, we do not have it in our index. But then you copy a portion of that, of the content of the page, and you look for it using the, the cite command. And out of the sudden, Google tells you that, oh yeah, we find the document, the page is totally in our index. So this is why when indexing, diagnosing indexing issues, it's worth actually take your time and go through the process quite meticulously. You know, you get your favorite beverage in your favorite cup and just go with it. Check it one by one and make fun of it. Or take a break if you've done it for a long time and it kind of gets a little boring for you. So what are the main causes of URL indexing issues? So first would be the content quality. If you have a lot of thin pages or duplicate content, then you might start facing URL indexing issues as a result. Another is indexing bloat, which is, in short, the situation in which you're indexing a lot of not so important pages, so there's not enough space for your valuable pages. And the third one is the crawl budget issues, when, once again, Google is crawling the pages that maybe are not that important and there's no time or resources for the ones that you find valuable. So these are all valid causes, and if you're seeing that URLs are not getting indexed, you might go through your Google Search Console and double check whether you might have some of these issues. Okay, so we've covered the URL indexing right now. We're moving on to partial indexing. We call it partial indexing because that means that the URL itself is indexed, but there are portions of the content that may not be for different reasons. And so the first reason why the portions of the content are not indexed is because the content that you want indexed does not appear on the mobile version of the page. Now, already since quite a while, Google is judging the pages based on how they look on mobile. So it shouldn't be a problem these days, since a lot of websites already use responsive web design, but sometimes we all make mistakes, or the implementations are done maybe a little too quickly for a lot of different reasons. So sometimes it's worth checking that the mobile version and the desktop versions exactly match, because if they don't, and if you find content that exists on the mobile, on the desktop version, but does not exist on mobile, then when you check it for indexation on Google, it may just happen that it's not indexed. Now, diagnosing mobile first related indexing problems is really fun, because in the first simple way, it's basically like playing find five differences, right? You open one page with your mobile version, a mobile version of your page in one window, then in another window you open the desktop version of your page, and you just slowly scroll down, and you take a look at content here, content there, and if you spot a difference, then voila, there is a potential of a problem, and you double check it with Google. The other, a little bit more geeky, a way of diagnosing mobile first related indexing issues is with the tool like diff checker that basically allows you to compare code. It requires a little bit of code reading, but it's still pretty decent. And in case you wanted to pass the information on to your dev team, it might be useful to give them a code snippet that needs fixing. On to the third indexing issue, which is related to JavaScript. So JavaScript related indexing problem is a little bit like kind of verifying the difference and trying to find how the two pages are different. It's just that you're comparing the page that is normally loaded and the one that is loaded without JavaScript. Now, in order to disable JavaScript, there is plenty of Chrome plugins. You can use Chrome DevTools as well, or you can also use a free one tool that's called What Would JavaScript Do, that I'm going to show you a little bit later. But it basically is all about spotting what's on the version of the page that is on the version of the page that has the JavaScript loaded and may not be when the JavaScript is disabled. Now, once again, the process starts with checking whether the URL is there. So the URL that we're analyzing in this particular example is on Google, but then we spotted a portion of the content that is loaded with JavaScript. So basically it does not appear when the JavaScript is disabled. And we check it with Google and no, this portion of the content is basically not on Google. So if it's important for the overall quality of your page, then you might want to change that. And that brings us to the most funky part, to the most interesting part of the indexing issues, which is called layout-based indexing issues. Now, this part is, we're going to have to jump a little bit into Google patents, because this is the least, I'm going to say least described or least talked about, at least from my perspective. So the first kind of extract from Google patents tells us that content location matters, and that the text appearing above the fold may be considered more important than the text below the fold. Now, once again, just so that we're all on the same page, content below the fold is what you can see before you start scrolling, and it kind of makes sense, right? So the first impression of the page is what you see before you even move your finger. So Google might judge the portion that is higher on the page as more important, and those more likely to index it. Another one is that the importance of a section is based on its prominence in the prominence of the section within the rendered layout. So if you have an example of the page like this, we can see that the main article is kind of the most prominent on the whole page, and it is the most likely to get indexed by Google. And this is kind of interesting when we think about what I've just said about above the fold content, because above the fold, we can see that we have the menu and that we have the ads that Google kind of maybe not necessarily cares about so much, because they do understand that the main content is the main article out there. The third extract from the patents tells us that there are simply some portions of the page that Google is going to see as more important. And they give an example of more top stories from CNN, which basically Google is going to judge as more important and will give it more probability of being selected. So now that we've covered all the important portions of the content, we're going to go through the sections that are usually absolutely ignored or dismissed by Google. And these are the parts of the page that are very common on e-commerce websites, which are, for example, customers also bought blah, 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 or similar products, blah, blah, blah. You might also be interested in blah, blah, blah. So Google really struggles with indexing these parts of the page. Now, if we take a look at the product page, of a sample product page from Target, we can see that the URL is getting indexed, so that's fantastic. But then when we play around with different portions of the page, we can see that the sponsored part does not necessarily deserve Google attention and did not deserve this place in the index. So we kind of checked different pieces of content, and we realized that they were not really in the index there. So now we've covered all 4 different types of indexing issues. And the funny thing is that all of them, you could kind of easily identify, okay, so this is, I don't know, this particular page has this particular reason for not being indexed. This other page has this other reason for not being indexed. But in real life and in the work that we do on a daily basis, it very often happens that all of these problems are combined at once on one page. And that is exactly what's happening with the example that I've used in the layout-based indexing issue. So we have the top of the page, the main content that is indexed, and another part of the product description is not indexed due to some JS and mobile related issues, and some portions of the content that are even lower down the page are not getting indexed, probably because of the layout issues. So that's kind of how it looks in real life. It's much less obvious detective work, but it's still quite fun. So now I'm going to move to live examples, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story behind the preparation of this presentation. So I really like, even though it's online, I really like the interaction. I thought I'm just going to gather about 15 to 20 examples of pages where I know there might be some indexing issues, and I'm just going to, you know, click there, and kind of show you what's happening. But the problem, or the good thing about indexing, is that it's very volatile. It changes quite a lot. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of pages where I've prepared for the presentation, and they changed when I was presenting, when I was kind of preparing the example, which for me, it's pretty interesting to watch. And you have to believe me because, well, you were not here when I was looking for these examples. Okay, well, let's get straight to it. So we have the Mintra page, which is an Indian e-commerce that has quite a lot of its pages outside of Google's index. So this is just a general category page. It looks pretty, well, decent, normal. Most of the page are the product pages, and in the bottom you have the beautiful description. Some content writer has poured their heart and soul into creating it, so fantastic. Then you're going to the mobile version of the page. It looks, well, a little bit adjusted to the mobile page. So you have the products, you have the facet navigation in here, but then it already looks a little bit different because it has much more watches displayed on the mobile version than in the desktop version. And that was like this since I started preparing the presentation, so that has not changed. But when I scroll all the way down, a week ago, the presentation, not the presentation, sorry, the description was not there. So I could easily see like, okay, this is just a typical example of the mobile first related indexing issue. And so I know this because I've been sleeping on that page for a very long time. But I'm thinking about some participants of this meetup who would be watching it and who would see, scroll down the page and see this right now. It would be really hard to pinpoint why a portion of that description, so I've already checked it for indexation before, is not in the Google index, because this category description is actually visible with the JavaScript disabled. So it will be kind of hard to figure out. And this is usually what happens when you're trying to diagnose indexing issues. It's not that obvious. So another example that I found just pretty funky is a page that has bazillion of images, and it has quite a lot of reviews as well. But when you remove JavaScript, basically the only thing that stays is the product description in here. So when I typed in the portion of the review, you can see that it's not on Google. So this is kind of a very straightforward JS related indexing issue, well, that I can judge without looking at Google Search Console, because it's never so obvious, but still it can give me a pretty good understanding why this content is not indexed. So very useful for diagnosing JavaScript related issues is our What Would JavaScript Do tool, which basically shows us how a page looks when the JavaScript is enabled and disabled. So once again, I've chosen a product page of an e-commerce called Amway. So when you look at the differences, you can see that, well, when JavaScript is enabled, there's quite a lot of content in here. But when JavaScript is disabled, yeah, it doesn't even scroll, right? It's just empty. But still, this page is indexed by Google. So once again, diagnosing indexing issues is not that straightforward. But since Halloween is coming, I thought I would just show you one more example. So this is a beautiful Halloween decoration with JavaScript disabled, so you cannot absolutely see the product. Only when you load the JavaScript right here, you're going to see actually what the page is about. And so even though, to me personally, these two pages, the Amway page and the SEOnerd's page, kind of seem kind of empty, the Amway page is indexed. However, the product page for SEOnerd is not. So to me, diagnosing indexing issues is a little bit of a game. And I think that if you have some time, it's really worth investigating and putting that indexing checkup on your digital marketing roadmap somewhere. To sum up, since I know that the slides will be shared with you later on, I just included the links to some of the resources that I've mentioned during the presentation. And since at Onely we're super passionate about the indexing issues in general, just wanted to let you know that we're also just launched the zip type, which is a tool that helps you analyze your index coverage issues without access to Google Search Console. So this is pretty much the exercise that we've been doing so far. So thank you very much. I think I've spoken a little bit faster than I thought I would. But yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Alex. Don't worry about speaking fast because, as you know, I speak quite fast. So,
I knew that you would understand.
So don't worry. I get it. I get it.
Great.
So, so first of all, it was cool. It was great presentation. Thank you so much. Just want to say something before we start the Q&A, because I'm dying to say that since the beginning of the meetup, because I'm proud of my partner in crime, Iselin, because she prepared a t-shirt about written SEOnerdSwitzerland and she sent me. And maybe she will prepare more. I'm still in the process of convincing her, but she did like a gift to me. So I hope that soon we will have a super cool t-shirt to share with everybody in the community. So yeah, you would say, Sarah, why are you speaking about that now? But it doesn't matter. I thought that I did have to say it because it was important to me. So that is the advantage of being in Austria. So, okay, so seriously speaking, let's come back to business and let's check if there are questions. As Iselin said, you can add the question in the chat or you can add them in the Q&A. If you have any kind of question, please go for it. I think then the presentation was quite clear, but please.
And while you look for the questions in the chat, Sarah, I do have one to start. So thanks for the presentation, Alex. That was awesome. I really liked it. Really liked your enthusiasm and the slides were really beautiful. And so the example you showed us were mainly e-commerce.
Yeah.
So are there other sites that you see are often face these type of challenges?
Yeah, definitely. There's quite a lot of them. And since we generally talk a lot about indexing at Onely, recently we've been also analyzing the examples of a page like Goodreads, for example. They also have quite a lot of pages that are not index doesn't choose, indexing issues don't choose, but it basically, the problem are not really dependent on whether that's e-commerce or not. It's mostly related to how the page is built and what kind of efforts are done to kind of manage the I'm going to call it indexing strategy. So if you have a strategy in place, there is more probability that you're not going to be facing the indexing issues. If you do not have a strategy in place or you're not tracking it, then even if you have a blog or any type of website, that these issues can kind of appear on your page.
Yeah, okay. I can imagine that with e-commerce websites, it scales very quickly.
Yeah, because when you have a lot of products, it's kind of it's very easy, right? And when we were in the beginning, when I was showing kind of the main causes for the URL indexing, the thin content, when you have lots of pages, product pages, right, that maybe not all of the product pages have very well prepared descriptions, it's very easy. And as you said, that can scale up super fast.
So let's start. I have a question. I have a question. I mean, I selected the question by Jacob. In your opinion, how JavaScript related issue apply to site building JavaScript based language framework like React? So everything then is like, let me translate that. Maybe it's a scare, but it's just like when you're using a heavy JavaScript framework, will you always have this kind of issue somehow? So
yeah. So there is a possibility of kind of applying JavaScript or building a JavaScript website without having indexing issues, right? So what I was trying to show with the live examples later on is, even though some contents are not, even though some contents are loaded with JavaScript, they can still be, for example, present in the source code. And if they're present in the source code, then Google can still be able to read them, understand them, and then index them as well. Now, generally building a JavaScript heavy website, I'm not a developer, so it's kind of a feeling that I have with working after working with some of our clients, has a lot of drawbacks as well, but it's not a rule that you have a website built with JavaScript, you're going to face indexing issues. Google is able to read and kind of crawl and render JavaScript. It's just that it doesn't do it as efficiently as it would, let's say, HTML page. So it's not as straightforward. That's why investigating those indexing issues is not as straightforward as maybe my example has shown.
So maybe you want to add something on that, because we speak a lot about Google, but these are not the only search engine. Yeah. So always remember that when you are using like, sorry if I intervene in that, but maybe when you're using like these frameworks, which are fine, maybe think a little bit also about the market. Because maybe if you want to go in another market then where Google is not so strong, then they don't have the same ability to render, and some just don't render. So so just be careful on that maybe. So
I do have a quick question, Alex. Can you copy paste the link to the reference, the right article that is somewhere in your slides? About the URL popularity. It was quite at the beginning of the talk.
Okay. Wait.
Someone would love to read it now.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to do it.
Otherwise, we'll just have we'll share the slides at the end anyway. So
yeah, that should be fine. I'm trying to do it quickly, which I'm failing to do. In the beginning, yeah. One quick. Almost there. Oh God, sorry. It's a presentation, so it's not necessarily a link. Give me one quick second. Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Technical issues, they are always what hits us.
But you know, anyway, we will share the slides in the community, so it will work fine.
Okay, perfect. So, I think I have it. I did it. Yeah, as I said in the presentation, it was not a this to everybody. Where do we have
it's this? Fine. Don't sweat it. I'm sure.
Done.
You understand.
Super.
All right.
Okay, so you have the famous link now. So what can be done from the beginning to avoid indexing issue, at least minimize them?
Yeah, like what kind of recommendation should we tell the development team even before they start coding?
This is a tricky one.
I agree.
From my experience is when you kind of when an SEO is involved in the process of building a website, it's always kind of easier. Since every website is a little bit different, so it's hard to give a recommendation, a broad recommendation, right? Just from the top of my head, I would say make sure that all the important contents are in the HTML. So you have your content. So I don't know, if you have a blog article, make sure that the blog article is there. Make sure that all of the links are visible in the HTML code. Make sure basically that the most important parts, that would be, that's the one recommendation that would be really useful. I think that the remaining would kind of depend on the technology. What do you think?
Yeah.
Let's say that you work with a WordPress development team and they have a favorite template. I suppose we should check that template, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of testing that would be great to do. When you have access to the testing environment and you have the access early on, it's super easy to kind of catch the mistakes that maybe you didn't think when you were giving the initial recommendations.
Yeah. So based on my experience, but maybe other SEO has a different experience, some frameworks make your life easier for this indexing part, and some framework you sweat a little bit more. So so that also play a role. Maybe you can check a little bit feedback on the framework when you are starting. As you say, if it is everything is in the initial HTML instead of client-side rendering, it makes it a little bit much easier. By a little bit, I would say much easier, just because yes, you don't have all this resource use of resource, which, as you also say, it doesn't mean then JavaScript website do not get indexed, because often they get indexed, the content also get indexed. When you have e-commerce, normally you have a tendency of using more JavaScript. So I would say then there are 2 or 3 things. Then correct me, Alex, what you think, and Isaline. So it's like, which technology do you use? Yeah. Which kind of website do you want to build? Because some technology will not be adapted for some website. So you have to balance the risk and the return on that. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think that's super valid. And I also think that when you said when it depends on the site that you're building, and it immediately kind of brings me, makes me think of all the duplication issues that you usually as SEO sees on the e-commerce websites. For example, when we have a blog, there is a lot of tags that are just created just for not well thought reason. And so when you're thinking of, when you're just starting off, you can kind of create a kind of a list of things that you really have to be very careful about. And I think that might be useful. But unfortunately, as an SEO, and again, the same as with development, it all depends. So it will be good. So it will be good to have a good chat with whoever is going to building that website, and make sure that we understand each other and that we're there to help each other.
Yes, perfect. So there is a question, but it's not really. Yes, somehow is related. Okay, so okay, actually we recently had quite the positive issue with the clients. Okay, some page that had no value and were blocked through robot.txt were still being indexed. Okay, this is interesting because they had no value, but they were indexed. Also, they did not receive any internal links. Do you have any estimation why that could be?
External links.
Yeah, I would say, I mean.
Yeah, and I would say that blocking a file or a URL through robots.txt does not block it from indexing. That's one thing that you have to remember, and I think that's what you were thinking about, Iselin, when you just said that, right? So if the page was not discovered, if the low value page was not discovered through internal linking, it must have come from the outside somehow. So if anyone has shared the page somewhere and Google discovered it through an external page, then probably robots.txt is not the way to go. If you want to no index the page, then use probably no index tags would be much better there.
Yes. Okay, I think the same. Maybe the no index if you want to block it, and index it from the website. Okay, I hope then that is okay. So just one thing, we still have a few minutes. You can still ask questions. Please don't do as usual at 2 minutes before the end when we are saying bye, and then, sorry, I have a question. So if you have a question, go for it now. Alex is there. She is there to support you, happy to answer. Do it. Do it one, do it two. Okay, now it looks like, seriously, it was a very clear presentation, so I'm not surprised that.
No, I do have a question. Because I do have a question. I'm like, because searching for the reason, I mean, there is a little bit of detective work involved. So I'm thinking just very broadly when I'm thinking about my timing for an audit. Actually, you would just flag the indexing issue, but you would not search for the reason why it's not indexed. Because I'm thinking if I'm doing an audit, I can't, like, there are so many things to check. So you would just flag indexing issues and say, hey, you gotta check that later and ask for extra budget, or how do you deal with it with clients?
Oh, wow. So I think there's a little bit of a difference of how probably you work as a freelancer as opposed to how I work as a member of an agency. So we focus on technical SEO, and there's when there are indexing issues, they usually kind of pulled out in the very beginning and flagged as important. And I'm not the one negotiating for the extension of the. So I'm not really the best person to ask that portion of the question. But when you're saying that when I see an indexing issue, I kind of do the research that I've showed you during the presentation. Yep. So when I see that, oh, it's not, it's loaded with JavaScript, so that might cause indexing issues. Oh, there's a difference. And I kind of try to explain what the possible reason might be. And yeah, of course, if let's say that we have a 3-month contract, I'm just, giving a random example. And then the questions regarding that indexation come later, then yeah, then we kind of probably are asked to get paid a little extra, but Maria, please don't listen to this. But yeah, it's yeah, that's kind of what we do. But we try to kind of give as many information as we can right in the beginning, just so that the client can fix it, because we strongly believe that indexing is really important. So yeah, it has to be somewhere. It has to be discovered or at least double checked in the very beginning. So even with the short term contract, it's going to be tackled at first.
I think indexing issues feels a bit like you are the bearer of bad news, because it's so essential, and when you do the audit, then fixing it's often costly because it requires development work, and you're like, oh, I saw that issue on the website. So basically you have to rethink how you did your product pages.
Yeah, so that always hurts.
That's a bit tricky.
Yeah. I always like what I try, but I haven't really found a good resource for this. So if you guys kind of have it, that would be fantastic to share at some point. You know, like I have clients where through the change of indexing strategy, we've had beautiful results, you know, and it's kind of like, oh, we fixed just this, we just fixed indexing, and the traffic or the impressions just soared, and it was amazing, you know. And if I could show this kind of examples to a lot of clients who don't want to invest, or maybe not don't want to, but they're hesitant about investing money in kind of fixing the indexing problem, I think that it would help a lot. But I haven't found any resource with the examples of how investing in indexing strategy would actually bring a positive result in the end.
Alec,
And
we
I'm
still
not
have a
allowed to
question.
kind of share, personal stories. But yeah, go ahead. I've seen these questions come up.
Yeah, so yes, we still have a question, and that will be the last one. And yes, so okay, so there is a situation here. So lately we received too many discover not index, even though the content is pretty good. Okay, you say indexed by being index. Okay, so that is good news, but not Google. It is something you came across, and then he adds some extra information which are useful to know, because they're saying, okay, we add internal linking to some of the important articles to make Google see the unindexed pages. Google see those internal linking, so okay, good, but still no index them. Any idea why? Maybe this is to answer like this, you need to see the website, but again, I will see.
Probably, right? I don't think, unfortunately, that I can give any straightforward answer, and I don't think you can without really thorough investigation. I would basically go through these pages and maybe checking for so if you're saying that these pages are valuable and they have valuable content that has been, I don't know, appreciated by other browsers, but maybe you have a lot of the same valuable pages. So just the regular problem with content duplication, or maybe even though you've added those links there, to the valuable pages, we'll check if they're visible. So these are the kind of first steps that I would take. I'm pretty sure that's not the answer that you expected in here. But I guess would be
like this,
I would I would try to investigate with taking a look of how Google sees the page. I would go to maybe a tool like Ahrefs to check whether there's a lot of external links that are linking to that page as well.
My guess is who is asking, check it with the Search Console. Did you check with the Search Console just to make sure? Then I mean, you can see the pages properly and canonical. I mean, it's not that Google selected a different canonical, because you never know that, or then have different sign, and maybe check last time, then it was crawling, seeing the internal links in cached version. Okay. Well, I don't know, Isaline, Alex, what you think, but in this case, probably is something then you really need like to see the website and have further investigation. It looks more complicated than just
taking a look at all of the small details that Google Search Console would tell you. So if it's not indexed, and another thing, actually, when it's even if the link is in discovered not indexed, why don't you also double check with the cite command whether it's not in the index? Like a lot of the times it happens that the link, the list of non-indexed discovered non-indexed pages is blown up in Google Search Console, but when you check it with you're ruining my argumentation.
And I wanted to support your argument there.
I'm really trying.
And I wanted to support it because it was making sense.
I think it's typically it's typically the kind of very specific questions, really difficult to answer without access to any of the websites, of the information. So I think you've done well, Alex, in trying to answer. It's like
Thank you for the
being,
understanding of.
you are being blind and trying to answer something to help, but I think it's these gates, it's really difficult. You need a bit of time to assess the situation.
Okay.
But it sounds like a nightmare. So we
enjoy for your website.
You have
Yeah,
you have all.
I really hope that you're gonna find the solution there.
And if you want some more specific supports, you can of course contact Alex for an offer. Oh, I've heard it's not her making the offers, but of course we are happy to
contact Wanli for sure. We're gonna we're gonna be more than happy to.
yeah. Good luck, because this is very quickly a big nightmare, this indexing things. So
anyway, thank you so much, because I think thanks, this was okay. Oh, you're taking your brownie now.
Thanks.
Because you did your effort. Now it's time to give you brownie. Ale, brownie to Alex, because she did the effort.
Brownie to all the questions. Brownie to Sarah and Ghislaine. Thank you.
Yeah, Ale, we all get them. I like brownie, so it's okay for me.
Awesome.
So okay, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much, Isoline. It was the first time since a couple of months that we were having the meetup together, and you're always lovely to interact with guests, Isoline. So thank you so much to everybody, and have a nice evening. Depends where you're located, but for us it's evening. So then for us it's nice evening. And yes, thank you so much, and see you to the next meetup. And what else should I say? Nothing, no? I forgot.
Thank you,
Sarah. Thank you, Aleksandra. It takes a huge amount of time to prepare a presentation and do the dry runs. And I know of the investments you had to do to be here tonight. So thanks a lot, really, for your time and effort. We much appreciate. And of course, thanks to everybody who spent just an hour of their precious time with us tonight.
Hey, Alex, check the chat. I don't know exactly what he said.
Dziękuję. That means thank you.
But I thought they needed something like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we learn a new. So not only we are an SEO meetup, now you can even learn languages with us. Join us.
For any reason.
Okay, bye, girls. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.